Hey, welcome to the Insider edition of the Upland Nation podcast. Yeah, that's what we're going to be calling those bonus episodes. And hey, the good news is those bonus episodes will occur every other week. I'm Scott Linden, and thanks for listening. I hope you'll enjoy these. The Insider editions will be a deeper dive into some of the single subjects or people or adventure stories that I hope will become a little bit more educational, useful, practical on topics that are of high priority for you and me and everybody else who follows dogs in the field. And this is no exception. The first of our Insider editions will be on the 5 things that you might want to work on with your dog and yourself now that the season is over. Yeah, I'll get back deeper into that in just a moment, but let me remind you that we are made possible on these Insider editions by CableGangz Stakeout Systems and Purina Pro Plan Sport dog food. Well, as I said, the 5 things you and your dog should work on now that the season is over. It's about, everything is settled, right? Got the guns cleaned and put up. The dog is rested, doctored, healed. You're tired of posting old photos on social media, and hopefully there's still some birds in the freezer. It's time to take stock and a long look at your just concluded hunting season. Could it have been better? Well, I know. If you answered no, congratulations, send me some of your mojo. But if you muttered, yeah, there's a dozen or more things that you could work on over the next few months to get ready for opening day. I'm going to touch on 5 of them, some for you, some for your dog, some for the both of you. That might tax your patience, might cost a few bucks, or maybe you'll need to change one of those routines you've done for years. You might have to buck a tradition or feel a twinge in your bad knee. Hopefully you'll lose a few pounds, and those sacrifices will pay off on opening day. Why bother? Well, as the season progresses, your dog could have more fines, could handle the birds better. Of course, that'll minimize the smirks and the smart-ass remarks from your friends. Speaking of friends, you might make a new one. You might earn your dog's complete adulation. And next season, the shelf on the freezer with birds in it will be overflowing. So let's get to it. We got 5 to go. Number 1 on my list. Let's take a vote. How many other people think their dog's steadiness kind of went off the rails as the season went on? We have so many things, and it's so exciting out there that all the training and testing, all the psychology, and all these things we did with our dog just kind of, what would I call it? They wear out over the course of the season. Whether it's your hand signals, retrieving, everything is polished at the beginning. But then someone sneaks up later in the season and pulls the rug out from under all of our training, all of our self-discipline. One of the most noticeable backslides is in steadiness. Yeah, you've been there. You know what it's like. So do your hunting buddies. And your dog certainly does, because he's the beneficiary. Yeah, some of those fines late in the season look more like recess at kindergarten, don't they? Yeah, by December, oh man, yeah. But nobody, absolutely nobody says they don't care about steadiness. Yeah, I understand. It means different things to different people, but whatever it means to you, I can almost guarantee it's not there at the end of the season, even if it was at the beginning. Whatever your belief when it comes to steadiness, If it's working, your shooting is better because your dog holds still, doesn't flush it too soon. He sees shot birds fall. He won't chase the missed birds, and he doesn't push the rest of the covey into the air. And number one on my list, he won't be in the path of a low shot by your brother-in-law. Like I said, define it any way you like. Steady to wing and shot, steady wing shot and fall, the whole Megillah. Now is the time to start putting in the effort, retraining during the off. I got to tell you, that's one of the more fun aspects of working with a pointing dog. Is you can always work on that, and it gives you something to do with your dog every day, all year. I talk a lot about my friend Dave and his new first pointing breed. He's got a Brittany now, and I wrote a letter to him a while back, and you read it. It was in Gun Dog magazine. And in there I said, the difference between Prez, your new Brit, and your old guy, Buster, was that you've always got something to train with a pointing dog. Buster was a Labrador. Wash and wear dog. Prez, the Brittany, needs work every day, especially as a youngster, but there's always something you can do with your dog all year, including work on steadiness. Put your dog on live birds in controlled situations where you can't catch them. Reinforce the whoa command, or if you got a flushing dog, teach the hup command on live birds. Yeah, you don't start there, but you work up to all of that. Don't shoot the birds that you flush for a while. Pick up the ones you do shoot for a while. Harken back to your first go-round at training the steadiness pointing process and do it again. Or if you're really smart, you'll talk to some of the pros out there at your NAVTA chapter or wherever else you meet with those kind of people and get better advice. Start at square one if you want. This is a great time to do it. Build yourself a whoa table. You'll find plenty of uses for it, including teaching whoa. And let me just make clear, the whoa command is separate from steadiness. Steadiness should be natural, instinctive. The whoa command is a last-ditch effort to keep your dog still when all heck is breaking loose around him. Popcorn flush, or fellow hunters are not doing what they're supposed to do. So you got to teach both. And there are a lot of great methods out there for it. So besides the satisfaction of a job well done, there's beauty and joy in the grace of a dog artfully handling birds. Yeah, you'll never get a dinner date with Taylor Swift, but you might have that ideal fine point, steadiness to wing, shot, and fall. Yeah, I said to somebody once, every bird find is an at-bat in the World Series. Unfortunately, a wobbly dog will get us benched. But if we get on base, we'll stay in the lineup next inning, and we can do it again. Yeah, I know. It's not easy. It's kind of like a basic law of physics. The number of days you spend in the field divided by the number of birds your dog encounters equals the degree of degradation in steadiness over the season. So even during the season, if we want to stem the bleeding, we'll retrain periodically as we're on that uphill march, always uphill from opening day to closing day. I'm Scott Linden. This is an insider edition of the Upland Nation podcast where we're working on, training both of us in this edition. 5 things we can do now that the season is over and we have the time to reflect and get our act together. Number 2 on my list, maybe it's number 1 on your list, especially if you have one of those dogs that's designed for it, but actually sometimes the pointing breeds are the ones who need it most. That is retrieving. I talked about a new law of physics, field time and degradation. None of that matters unless you actually hit some of the birds you shoot at. So here's my second law. The number of shots divided by the number of hit birds equals the speed of the backsliding on your dog's retrieves. Now, I'm not criticizing your dog. I don't know what it's like. Only you do. But again, the level of satisfaction is yours. You decide what your expectations are going to be, and you need to train to that. Because we're out there for fun, aren't we? Watching the dog, being in a beautiful place, good friends around. Here's the X factor, though. Your willingness to enforce the rules in the heat of the hunt. Yeah, whether it's steadiness or, in this case, retrieving. You know, you finally hit something, and I've been there. You've seen me. High-fiving, taking the pictures, all that stuff outranks the disciplined retrieve to hand that you taught last summer. So let's get back to that for a while. You know, let me first kind of give you an example. I'll relive this one from last season. We finally get a decent bit of dog work, and a covey rises and leads to multiple birds on the ground. Dog one or more than one dog buzzing around randomly, finds a bird, picks it up, then realizes, you know, there were some other shots. There might be other birds here. So he puts it down, starts looking for another one. Or worse, he just starts hunting again, leaves all the dead birds. Or he brings it back, but kind of just drops it off, or doesn't come all the way back to you, or runs. I remember a little short hair in California once. We were making a show, and she was so psyched, and the guy had allowed it to get to this point, the handler. She would pick up every bird and bring it back as fast as she could run, and just simply drop it off as she went back to hunting. I called it the drive-by retrieve. It was kind of cute, and it worked, and I'm not going to tell somebody else how to handle their dog in the field. But, you know, if none of that is working for you, then, you know, you've heard it. Somebody said it to you after your own version of that. Conserve game, hunt with a trained dog. Absolutely true. Not just a bumper sticker. Absolutely true. Now, if that's not enough incentive to insist on a complete retrieve, consider that's also the punctuation mark, the final act in a ballet with a dog, a bird, and a human. And the artful consummation of that transaction is pretty satisfying for, well, 2 of the 3 parties. Now, I'm not advocating. Only you know whether it's important enough to force break your dog or condition to retrieve it, whatever it is. Whatever method you choose, if you focus and train to it in the off season, you'll be ready for the opener, and hopefully deep into the season. And hopefully you're retraining a little bit here and there and insisting on compliance during the season, which is retraining as well. Throw your bumpers and your dead birds. Run the whole gamut, a full-blown point shot retrieve scenario. That'll keep your dog from phoning it in next season. Talk to your friends for advice. Again, go to your chapter meetings and your training days. Maybe just go to somebody else's field trial or hunt test and watch what other handlers do. Yeah, it works. I remember going up it was mid-season, I think, by then. But there's this canyon I love in the high desert Chukar country. And, I don't count on any place to always hold birds, but this one has held birds for us before. So coming down the same canyon was some poor schmo. You know the look. From 100 yards, you can tell he's not having a very good day. And his dog, a black Labrador, is kind of just trotting along next to him, not doing much of anything. Neither of them have any energy left. It's very clear. We got to talk, and he said, oh, yeah, I shot a bird way up there, and he glided all the way down. I thought he was right over there, and he points, behind him. But my dog is all in. He did his best, but he's so tired, and he couldn't find it. And so, it's a loss. But you can have it if you find it. I said, well, we don't want it, but you want it, so let's go. So we went up to about the spot, and I sent my wire hair. At the time, that was Yankee. I sent him into the general area, and I have a command for that. The command is dead bird, and what it means is, hey, somewhere in this area, there's a bird. So I will, I'll kind of hopefully send him kind of from the downwind side, so that if there is any scent, it will help. And by then, there was plenty, I'm sure. So I said, dead bird. And he puts his nose to the ground, and that's how he worked, and just kind of worked through that low sagebrush, from bush to bush for a while, then a little bit casting right, a little bit casting left, doing a circle here and there, a lot of zigzags. Pretty soon he was far enough out where the sage was taller than him, but you could still hear him. He's just doing that kind of snuffling, and you could hear a foot fall once in a while, and he had a collar tag or two on, so we were watching, and then nothing. Eventually, nothing. Then there's that scuffle in the dirt and a little cloud of dust, and here he comes with the bird in his mouth. Well, I was never more grateful for an inconvenient hunt test date. Even now, I know better than to show off my dog's retrieving skills after Thanksgiving, but this was well before that holiday, and boy, oh boy, was I proud of Yankee. Well, happy ending on that one, and ever grateful, like I said, for doing the things early in the season and before the season that end up paying off later in the season. Well, that's number 2 on the list. We have 3 more to go, including recall, something for you and your own fitness, and you and your shotgun are going to get to know each other a little bit better coming up on this insider edition of the Upland Nation podcast, brought to you in part by CableGangz. Let me just spell that for you. They're our new sponsor, and I got to tell you a story about them. First, look them up on the internet, Cable, C-A-B-L-E, Gangz, G-A-N-G-Z.com, CableGangz.com. I complained about the other tie-out stakes that I've used in the past for all the usual reasons, and you know what they are, and I'm going to talk about one of them. So much so that I got a gift from my wife of a single tie-out stake from CableGangz. Immediately impressed. For these reasons, you can hammer all day long on the top of that stake, and it will not mushroom off the head or pinch the swivel mechanism to the point that it won't swivel anymore. Now, Brendan and the guys at CableGangz use a different cap weld that is stronger than the metal itself and will take those sledgehammer blows. Believe me, it works. I got that last Christmas. Used it all last season, and it still looks good. No problems, better engineering, better materials. Learn more at CableGangz.com, CableGangz.com. And our friends at Purina Pro Plan Sport Dog Food are back on this Insider Edition as well. Yeah, I'm feeding the Pro Plan Sport chicken formula, high protein, real meat is a first ingredient, 100% complete and balanced nutrition for Flick and all of you other folks who have highly active dogs. Yeah, 30% protein, 20% fat. I feed it year round because it's important to keep that ratio. Tastes great, Flick tells me. High in calories. If you're worried about off-season and not enough exercise, just cut back a little on the amount. Learn more about all the formulas, all the benefits, and how much science goes into every formulation of Pro Plan Sport dog food from Purina. Learn more at ProPlansport.com. Welcome back to the Insider edition of the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden. We're 2 tasks into our 5 off-season tasks. This one, I see it every day, all season, recall. You know, in every Sherlock Holmes book, at one point or another, he utters, "Elementary, my dear Watson." Well, clearly even that master detective never owned a bird dog because nothing is elementary. Getting your dog back from across the room while watching a football game is one thing, but while your dog has a bird in his mouth, maybe not so simple. And what about when the delectable scent of a running whitetail enters his nostrils? Well, that's when you get your non-compliance. Yeah, unless you've drilled it, and now's a great time to do it. And here's the perfect scenario for the term proof. You know, a lot of trainers will say, you know, what I want is I want a dog that can do this or not do this, depending on what you're training, in a lot of locations with a lot of distractions. That's proofing the dog. So for recall, it's coming back no matter what kind of temptation is out there. Off-season is when you have the time and the creativity to do just that. It's the perfect opportunity to put your dog among birds, other dogs, humans, traffic, all these things that you want him to ignore when you yell whatever your word is. I use here. You know, what about shots? You know, I've gone to the trouble of teaching a command. You know, when my dog hears a shot, he stops, just like when I say whoa, waits for me to tell him to go on. Then I can ask him to come back to me if that's the next thing. So think about how you use your recall and how you have proofed it to avoid disaster, or just keep the hunt moving forward instead of backwards while you're looking for your dog and everybody else wants to continue hunting. Need a bonus? Well, recall is the first or the last, depending on how you define it, step in the retrieving process. Yeah, think about it. Any self-respecting bird dog will race over to a downed bird. It's the coming back that's problematic. If you've nailed recall, the second half of your retrieving training is kind of done. How's that for motivation? And that's not all. You know, I said I'd only have 5, but here's a few more just in case. Obedience skills. You know, stay, down, walk at heel, hand and whistle commands you've worked out. Proof them as well. That way, the next season starts on the right paw. And as I said, training can go on. Well, it always goes on, even in the field during a hunt. The dog either learns that he can get away with murder, or he learns that the rules you set up and trained for before the season still apply once you got the vest on and you're in a new location. All right, Scott Linden here, an insider edition of the Upland Nation podcast. On to number 4. Don't take it personally, but couldn't your shooting use a little bit of work? Well, you've heard enough about my lamentations. I'm the worst shooter on television, and I always will be, but that's okay. I'm getting better by the day. Thanks, Vandy Fiedler. On one hunt last season, I had so much time. That bird had flown from a point on a ridge line toward me, like one of those European-driven pheasant shoots. This was a chucker. I had so much time as the bird arced overhead to set my feet right, slowly mount the shotgun, and then the rocks I was standing on rolled out from underfoot, and I landed on my knees as I pulled the trigger. Well, despite that last part of the situation, the pain in my knees was slightly alleviated by the heft of another bird in my vest. Yeah, by the time I'd collected myself, Flick was back with that dead chucker that had landed way down on the flats on what they call the alluvial plain at the bottom of that slope. That helps a little bit. But now, if I'd missed, I'd have had a good excuse. But not practicing your shooting shouldn't be that excuse. And Flick does remind me of that periodically. So, let's all say it together. Range time during the off season is a good idea. If you can't do that, or even in between sessions at the range, unloaded gun mounts, dry firing at home, even better. Scotty Scheffler, the golfer, Masters winner and all that, he spends way more time at the driving range than he ever does on the golf course. And that's for good reason. We can, just like a good golfer, we can take that complex series of hands, eyes, feet, brain transactions and practice them over and over. So they become ingrained, second nature. And as in everything, only perfect practice makes perfect. So, slow it down, break it down, put it back together in the right order at the right speed. Take a lesson if you can find a great instructor who hunts. Take another look at gun fit. Oh, and if you don't know whether you're cross-dominant or not, your vision is cross-dominant, get it checked. Simple, real simple. Anybody can do that for you. Probably something on my website, findbirdhuntingspots.com, that will help you with that. Yeah. And then finally, maybe now's the time to get a little competitive. More than one of my friends, and myself personally, saw my shooting get way better when I joined a league and was forced to deliver in front of friends and that opposing team. Maybe it's just going to the range and shooting with strangers, but whatever it is, there's something to be said for a little pressure. This time of year, simple. Deconstruct your gun mount, your swing, your follow-through. And I've found in the last couple years in particular, the slower and more deliberate your gun mount, the more likely your body will do the right things naturally. Your eyes will follow the target. Your gun will come up to the right spot. Stock on the cheek, but in the shoulder pocket. And your muzzle is moving just enough to track and shoot the bird. Not too much, just enough. One of the best investments you can make is a pair of snap caps, and you can go all the way. It is amazing to me, to this day, how many foul-ups there are in that last step where you take off the safety, put your finger into the trigger guard, and pull the trigger. do the whole thing, a couple thousand times between now and next season, and I bet you put more birds in the freezer. All right, number 5 on the list. This is a little bit of philosophy, and I apologize for that, but it's also a little bit of practicality. Hit the reset button. Only now do we have the luxury of enough time. Don't squander it. This is when you can browse around the map, peruse, meander through data, look back at your log if you kept one. You can daydream, change your mindset, develop new habits, and reap the rewards. Think about those so-called honey holes you just hammered that really didn't pay off. Why don't you substitute a new spot or two for those? Yeah, some of those won't pay off either, but some will. And you haven't wasted time on the old spots just because they're familiar. E-Scout, all of them. If you got time during the off-season, ground truth them with a visit. Take your dog, have a hike, maybe do a training session while you're out there. Remember, proofing in different locations. Next year, resolve to go the extra mile in those promising locations. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Get in shape enough to walk a little bit farther than everybody else. Find a dog training partner who will keep both you and your dog, and you do the same for him, on task. Meet regularly. Maybe it's time to shop for a new hunting partner who finally carries his share of the load and is pleasant to hang around with. If they bring lunch or buy the gas once in a while. Wouldn't that be great? Now's your chance during the off season. Make friends with the gym, the stair machine in particular. Maybe make plans to trade trips with a friend far away or join a dog training and testing organization. Study up on dogs or birds or habitat or shotguns. Read a classic book about bird hunting. Create a post-hunt ritual that cements those great memories and acknowledges the hard work of your dog. Yeah, those are all things that you can do now that just kind of fall by the wayside once the season starts and you're scrambling to get, the important stuff done. Well, I'll close with this. It ain't over till it's over. Once you've instilled those new habits in yourself and your dog, you're halfway there. Remember, mid-season is when things go off the rails. So train as you hunt. Insist that the things you trained so hard and worked so hard on during the off-season stay part of the drill. Maybe have a refresher moment or two at the beginning of a hunt or a few warm-up gun mounts. Let somebody else shoot while you handle your dog. Insist on that compliance in those hectic hunting situations for both you and your dog. If you do, there will be more finds and more shots. Just remember, we hunt to enjoy our dog's passion, intensity, and the joy they show us. It rubs off. You know the feeling. Off-season work ensures an opening day of hopes and a season of great memories. Hopefully it extends all the way through closing day. Well, thank you so much for listening. I'm Scott Linden. That's our first insider edition of the Upland Nation podcast. I hope there was something in there of value to you. If you think so, please leave a review or a rating at Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much in advance for that. We're made possible by CableGangz Stakeout Systems, CableGangz.com, CableGangz.com, and Purina Pro Plan Sport, ProPlansport.com. A lot of what I talked about is available in more detail at findbirdhuntingspots.com. I hope I'll see you there. Always something new to learn right there. Until I talk with you next time on the regular edition of the Upland Nation podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm Scott Linden. See you at the range.